The Knicks opened up the NBA season in 2 days in Boston, and it got me to think, where do the Knicks land within the Eastern Conference landscape? All that and much more on the Knicks Digest. What's up, guys? It's your boy Dariel once again, and let's get right into today's video. Lately, I've been jotting down notes on my phone, and I've taken a look at all the Eastern Conference teams and trying to project where the Knicks lie, which group of teams are in the same contention mode with the New York Knicks. And the more and more I did my research, the more and more I thought about it, I started to break the teams down in tiers. So out of all 15 teams in the Eastern Conference, I came up with 5 tiers. And the first tier that we're talking about basketball purgatory. And for those teams, I put the Charlotte Hornets, I put the Brooklyn Nets, I put the Washington Wizards, and the Detroit Pistons. It's pretty self-explanatory. These teams don't really have any sort of direction. They're not really trying to win a championship. They're not really able to do anything right now. And they're pretty much going to be in the draft lottery, and that's that. So Knicks fans, thankfully we're not in that tier, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this tier because the Knicks are not there. Moving on to the next tier. Now this tier, I named them Yawn. And the reason why I named them Yawn is because it's like, who kind of cares? Like, in this tier, I got the Chicago Bulls, I got the Atlanta Hawks, and I got the Toronto Raptors. Ben, I'm sorry, man, but your team, yeah, you guys got Scotty Barnes. He's gonna be a perennial all-star, but building around Scotty Barnes, what is that gonna look like? The Chicago Bulls with Zach LaVine, injury prone. They got Lonzo Ball back. Definitely get 2 claps for that. Lonzo Ball, much respect to you coming back after those 2 hideous years of not being able to play basketball. Definitely salute to you, Lonzo, for coming back. But DeMar DeRozan left for Sacramento. Nikola Vucevic hasn't really panned out to be the type of player that I thought and all NBA fans thought that he was. It looks like he's really just a good numbers, bad team kind of guy. He doesn't really have a huge impact on winning. And the Chicago Bulls are just like, okay, cool. Well, let's see what you guys can do. Lonzo Ball is if he's ever gonna get back to the level where he's playing, it's gonna take him a while because he missed 2 full calendar years of not playing basketball. And other than the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors, we got the Atlanta Hawks led by Trae Young again. Building a team around Trae Young. What is he, 6 feet, 6'1", point guard, scoring first point guard. I don't really know what kind of direction you can go with a Trae Young-led team. So that's tier 4. Now moving on to tier 3, I got you're still Lil Bro, except for the Miami Heat. Now in this tier, I got, of course, the Miami Heat, I got the Indiana Pacers, I got the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I got the Orlando Magic. Now, I specifically named this tier, you're still Lil Bro, except for the Miami Heat, because even though this tier is basically teams that are definitely on the come up, and they're definitely going to be challenging for the Eastern Conference for the next foreseeable future, they're still not there yet. And again, I put except for the Miami Heat because you can never sleep on the Miami Heat. Never, ever, ever. Whenever you think they're out for the count, next thing you know, Jimmy Butler is turning into Jimmy Jordan. He's having 45-point games in the playoffs, and they're going from an 8th seed all the way to the NBA Finals. Yeah, they lost in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets, but there's something about that Miami Heat team, man, led by Pat Riley. Maybe Heat culture is an actual thing. When everybody thinks that they're down and out for the count, they just come up from the grave, and then they just have these super, super deep playoff runs where nobody was expecting them. Eastern Conference Finals, pretty much year in, year out against the Boston Celtics, even though this season I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. But that is the reason why I group Miami Heat with these other teams. The Indiana Pacers, yeah, obviously Eastern Conference Finals last season, getting swept by the Boston Celtics, but I think you could say 80-85% of that is because injuries. The first round, they going up against Milwaukee Bucks, where Giannis didn't play. Dame injured himself within the first 3 games. And then after that, they go against the depleted New York Knicks teams, where we actually have skeletons out there on the floor. Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Mitchell Robinson, everybody that had Julius Randle, obviously, everybody that had substantial minutes, that was a really important rotational player, they were dealing with something or they had a really bad injury. Brunson, I think, was it game 6 or game 7? He left by halftime with a fractured left hand. Josh Hart had some weird abdominal muscle tissue injury, Randall's shoulder injury as well. So the Indiana Pacers, they do have a lot of talent, led by Tyrese Halliburton. I do like just the talent that they have on that team, but I still think they're not there yet. They're not at a point where they can seriously contend. And like I keep saying, I think last season was a bit of a hiccup, and I think you can make a real argument that last season was kind of, the Indiana Pacers got a little lucky. Other than the Pacers, other than the Miami Heat, Cleveland Cavaliers, again, the trio of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley, I'm not entirely too sure if that's going to work. I mean, we waxed that butt 2 seasons ago in the first round. Cleveland Cavaliers losing in 5 games. Jarrett Allen with all the quotes saying that the lights were a lot brighter than they expected, and then they didn't handle it well. And then this past offseason, before the offseason happened, Darius Garland said that if Donovan Mitchell is going to re-sign with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he's going to be looking to get traded. And then Donovan Mitchell re-signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I don't know what that whole chemistry, what that dynamic is about. But ever since Donovan Mitchell got there, man, like, what has happened? This is the thing with Donovan Mitchell. I don't really think he could be your best player on a championship contending team. Evan Mobley still has to take that next step in his career, in my opinion. He needs to add a little bit more of not even a 3-point shot, add a mid-range jumper. Add a substantial, consistent jumper to your offense, and your offense is going to blossom. Because right now, Jarrett Allen is in the paint, clogging up the paint. Jarrett Allen, he's one of the last old school big men where he's just running up and down the court, rebounding, altering shots, blocking shots, and finishing alley-oop plays, and he's really good at it. But if Evan Mobley, if his skill set is going to stay where it is right now, which is basically everything around the rim, then that dynamic between them two is not going to work. So Evan Mobley, I'm going to be keeping my eye on the Cleveland Cavaliers and Evan Mobley, seeing if his offense has somewhat evolved, if he's added a mid-range jump shot to his offense. We'll see what happens. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, I don't know, man. They're just, again, they're another team that you can throw in the conversation as far as like being lucky. First round last season, they went up against the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero's second NBA season, and in his second NBA season, he was an all-star. So that's definitely something that you got to salute. But it was a lot of that team's first time in the playoffs, and it took the Cleveland Cavaliers 7 games to get past them. And then after going up against the Orlando Magic, they go up against the Boston Celtics, and Donovan Mitchell gets injured. So there's just, I don't know, man. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm not really confident in them. I don't really think they're a real threat in the Eastern Conference, but we've seen weirder thing happens. And then the last team in this tier, the Orlando Magic, I just finished talking about them, being led by third-year player Paolo Banchero, who's going to be a problem. I think he's like 6'10", super strong, super athletic, and he's just putting all the pieces together. And this offseason, they added KCP, which is something that they desperately needed. They needed shooting. Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, and especially Franz Wagner, who looks like he forgot how to shoot. Like, that was the one thing that they were missing in the playoffs, which is one of, if not the biggest reasons why they couldn't beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in that Game 7. They were pretty much gassed by the end of the series. So adding KCP is definitely going to be something, a nice wrinkle to the offense, and that's another team that I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Okay, so the second to last tier, tier 2, and this tier I call them, we're coming for the crown. And of course, one of the teams that I have in this tier is the New York Knicks, and I'm going to talk about them last. The other teams that I have in this tier, I got the Milwaukee Bucks, and I got the Philadelphia 76ers. The more interesting team to me that's in this tier is the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think it's pretty obvious why. You just don't know what you're going to get from Dame and Giannis. Dame, top 75 player of all time. There's been just a lot of people, NBA talking head analysts, just saying how like Dame could be washed. Last season is a completely new environment. He was going through a lot of personal stuff, the divorce with his family and his wife. That stuff could definitely hurt your play on the court. But I honestly think the bigger reason as to why the combination of Dame and Giannis didn't work is because I don't think they're really a good fit together. Unfortunately, they didn't really get to really prove it in the playoffs last year because, like I said earlier, Dame went out with an injury within the first 3 games of that Indiana Pacers series. Giannis went out with a really bad calf strain like a week prior to playoffs starting, which is the second season in a row where he went out with an injury during the playoffs or right before the playoffs. So just saying, I think we got to start keeping an eye on Giannis and just as far as his availability. It's only 2 seasons, but it both happened around the time towards the end of the season, right before the playoffs or in the playoffs. So that's something we got to keep an eye on. But the Milwaukee Bucks, man, they did have some good pickups in the offseason. I believe they picked up Gary Trent Jr., who can spread the floor, a good 3-point shooter. I believe they picked up Taurean Prince as well. They picked up a couple players where they're not bums. They could definitely help out your offense. They could definitely help out your team. But again, it's all going to come down to the chemistry and the dynamic between Dame and Giannis. And I honestly don't know what Milwaukee Bucks we're going to get this season. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. The Philadelphia 76ers, man, in my opinion, they're in this tier because Joel Embiid is the best big man in the league, but you got to put that asterisk next to his name because you have to say when he's healthy, he is the best big man in the league. And that's the thing with Joel Embiid's career. He just has not been healthy, specifically around the time of the playoffs. And now picking up Paul George in free agency. Paul George, he might have a little bit of a niche of being injury prone, but my thing with Paul George is he actually doesn't really rise up to the occasion when you need him. Look at all those years in the Clippers when he was the number 2 behind Kawhi Leonard. Like, the Clippers were expecting a championship within those 5 years, and what did they get with that? They got one Western Conference Finals appearance where their best player didn't even play because he was, yes, say it with me, people, injured. And that whole Kawhi Leonard stuff about him being indefinitely out of the lineup, like, that's a whole nother story. But going back to the Philadelphia 76ers, man, they also picked up a few good pieces in the offseason. They picked up Eric Gordon. They picked up Andre Drummond to back up Joel Embiid, which I think is a hell of a pickup. Andre Drummond is still a very good, serviceable big in the league, and the reason why the Knicks didn't really look at him in free agency, I don't know why, but re-signing Kelly Oubre, like the Philadelphia 76ers, I think they have good pieces to put around Paul George and Joel Embiid. And I didn't even get to Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be in the conversation for best point guard in the league very, very soon. He made an all-star team last year, I believe. Last season in the playoffs, he actually torched the Knicks. Like, Tyrese Maxey is going to be a problem, man. And the Philadelphia 76ers, even though they have a lot of questions regarding injuries and all that, I still think they're a team that we got to keep an eye on. And of course, the last team in this tier that I have for going for the crown, the New York Knicks. Like, what else can I say that I haven't said in all the videos that I put out since the Karl Anthony Towns trade? Like, it's pretty obvious and it's very evident that the front office, Worldwide West and Leon Rose, that they're putting all of their chips on the table with the trade, with the season, re-signing OG, trading for Mikal, and trading for Karl Anthony Towns. Like, within the next few seasons, it's got to be an NBA Finals appearance. This season coming up, in my opinion, I at least think we have to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, of course, things can happen. Injuries can happen. Trades during the season can happen. If Coach Tibbs and the Knicks start off to a really rocky start, then maybe a coaching change might happen. Even though I don't think it's going to happen, I'm just throwing everything and anything out there that could happen. But I honestly think it's going to come down to Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns, by now, you guys know how I feel about the trade. I would have liked to see Julius Randle play with this team, give it at least half a season, see where we could make some improvements, if we even need to make any improvements. Mitchell Robinson, with the whole injury stuff, like, he's not going to be back until 2025 at least. So that's a glimmer of hope, but Mitchell Robinson is also in the injury-prone conversation. There's just a lot of questions surrounding this team, man. I don't have all the confidence in Cat, and I understand, talking to my friends, Chris, talking to Matt, I understand what they're seeing as far as the upside of this trade and how much of a risk it is. But if the risk turns out in our favor, it's a championship ring or it's an NBA Finals appearance. I think they're a lot more optimistic than me. I don't necessarily think that we can get to the finals or win an NBA Finals championship with Karl Anthony Towns as our second best player. Hopefully he proves me wrong, but Karl Anthony Towns, since he's gotten into the NBA, it's been a lot of talent, a lot of potential, and him not being able to cash in on that talent and that potential, not to where all us NBA fans, all of us hoop heads want him to look like. Karl-Anthony Towns is that one piece that's missing for him, and I don't necessarily have the answer. I just want him to mix it up a little bit more. Him relying on the three-point shot is not what's gonna help out this team. I understand that in today's NBA landscape, like, a lot, if not all of the NBA offenses are running off of three-pointers. I get it. Steph Curry completely changed the way the NBA is played, but when you're not taking advantage of your mismatch, when you're not taking advantage of your talent and your skills, Karl-Anthony Towns has the talent and the skills to be in the conversation for best big man in the league, but he's consistently not in that conversation. It's just Embiid and Jokic, and Karl-Anthony Towns is often than not an afterthought. Why is that? Is it the consistency that he's putting out, which isn't really great? Karl-Anthony Towns has moments of brilliance, and then he has moments of absolute just buffoonery, where he's just committing all these horrible fouls away from the basket in key moments, not just in the regular season, but in playoffs. And that is part of a player's makeup, your mental, your basketball IQ. Everything that makes a player great, besides what you're able to actually do with the basketball, you can make an argument that it's what you do without the basketball that makes a player great. And Karl-Anthony Towns just hasn't really proven that. And I'm just really worried that when we're in the playoffs and Jalen Brunson is having a hard time because he is the best player on our team currently, like, what's going to happen with the offense? We're going to have to rely on Karl-Anthony Towns. Is he going to be able to step up to the plate? I'm looking at the main event. I'm looking at the Boston Celtics because they're the reigning defending champions. And if anybody's going to get to the finals, they got to get through the Boston Celtics. So I'm already looking towards the Eastern Conference Finals against them. If we get there, we got OG and McHale locking them down on the perimeter. And then we got Kristaps Porzingis going up against Cat. Mitchell Robinson, if he comes back by that time, he might be the starting five. But as far as right now, we can only go with what we know. And what we know is that Kristaps is the starting five for the Boston Celtics when he comes back from injury. Cat is the starting five for the New York Knicks. And a matchup between Porzingis and Cat should win that matchup. But I don't think he's going to be able to on a consistent basis. If Cat goes up against Porzingis in however many games we go in that playoff series, 5, 6, 7, and Cat wins that individual matchup every single time, we have a really good shot at beating the Boston Celtics and advancing. But I guarantee you that there's going to be, however long the playoff series is, I guarantee you that Cat is going to have these boneheaded just decision-making plays where he's fouling too much, where he's shooting, 10 to 12 threes, and he's going to be like 5 for 12 from three-point land, which, I don't know, man. I'm just not as optimistic with this trade as everybody else. And again, I'm going to be keeping my eye on Cat, specifically on how he's playing. So we'll see what happens. I could go a lot more in detail as far as where the Knicks could land and as far as a Cat-led team, where the Knicks could finish, but that's just so much that, and a lot of it is pessimism. So I'm just going to hold off on that. But to finish off this video, the last team that I need to talk about is a team that I have not mentioned, well, barely mentioned, and I'm talking about the Boston Celtics, and I call them, you're the best around tier. And it's pretty self-explanatory. The Boston Celtics are the reigning NBA champions. Jaylen Brown got the Finals MVP. Jaylen Brown got the Eastern Conference Finals MVP as well. Jason Tatum, even though he has a ring around his finger now, in my opinion, I still think he has something to prove. Until it sucks to be an NBA player because with the media nowadays, like, there's always going to be something that you can grasp to. There's always going to be something that's going to be held against you. And for Jason Tatum, he's going to need that NBA Finals MVP to solidify his legacy. Right now, people are saying, like, yeah, you're a champion, but you weren't the best player on that championship team. Even though Jason Tatum is the best player on the Boston Celtics, you need that Finals MVP to solidify it. And on top of that, this past summer with the Olympics and Jaylen Brown not even getting a call, Jason Tatum with the amount of minutes that he played, Steve Kerr not playing him, like, the Boston Celtics, like, they have so much of this motivation and they just won a championship, which is crazy. And if you're asking me right now, who do I think will win a championship? I will probably say the Boston Celtics repeat rather than pick another team. I'd pick the Boston Celtics against the field. But this isn't a Celtic YouTube channel. This is a Knicks YouTube channel. So now that I talked to you guys about all the Eastern Conference teams and I revealed where, in my opinion, where I think the Knicks land within that Eastern Conference, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about my pessimism towards Karl Anthony Towns. Let me know what you guys think about my thoughts about the Boston Celtics. Anything you guys want to say, leave it in the comments. But of course, remember to hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the Knicks YouTube channel. I almost forgot, guys. Jalen Brunson for all the MVPs. The Deuce is loose for co-MVP. Mikal Bridges for Defensive Player of the Year. Taj Gibson for President. Even though you are not a New York Knickerbocker anymore, it's always Taj Gibson for President. And until next time, I'll check you out in the next video. Peace.